Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Supply Chain. So, today we're talking visibility, and you can't achieve that without technology. So, according to Procurement Tactics, what percentage of supply chain organizations increased their IT spending in 2025? Well, let me know your guesses over on social and keep listening because I'll let you know at the end of the show. So today I'm joined by the most recommended real-time transportation visibility platform in the world. Anybody can talk about how good they are, but recommendations are where the real truth comes out. So Shippeo must be doing something right. Now, Shippeo is changing the game for multimodal, bringing real-time transportation visibility to shippers and logistics providers so they can build resilient, sustainable, and customer-centric supply chains. Now, today I'm joined by Ross Hickey, lead solution consultant with a proven track record across the Americas and APAC. He excels in solution consulting, demo storytelling, and strategic problem solving. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of that storytelling on the show today. Because we're going to be taking on an industry hot topic, which is visibility. We'll be talking about closing visibility in gaps in your supply chain, turning visibility into business value, and building more future-proof tech stacks and why visibility is a real change management journey. So, welcome to the show, Ross.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's great to be here.
I am so excited to have you on the show. I spoke to Chris Mazza only a couple of months ago, and I'm really looking forward to keeping that momentum up with you today. I mean, diving even deeper into what you are doing over at Shippeo and how you're helping the world's largest brands go from data chaos to predictive clarity. So, before we dive in, can you introduce yourself, your role, and give us a reminder of who Shippeo is and how you help your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we discussed, my name is Ross Hickey. I am the lead solution consultant for Shippeo in the Americas. And really, what my role is all about is helping companies, exactly as you highlighted, Sarah, with their digital supply chain transformations and the value that visibility can provide there. Whether it's building out the business case behind what are the hard numbers that they can achieve, or as simple as what problems can be tackled. Just for those of you who don't know, Shipio is a multimodal real-time transportation visibility provider, meaning from end to end, from the first mile to the last mile of your supply chain, giving you true transparency to all of the transportation that takes place between those two ends. So really looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. And that's what everybody needs, right? We need more transparency. We need more
Exactly.
visibility. We need to know where everything is so that we can all do our jobs more efficiently and effectively and sort of optimize our supply chains. So, now for a long time, we've been talking about the issue of fragmentation, especially in transportation. What do you see as the typical blind spots? And why do you think organizations are overlooking some of these key areas in their transportation networks?
That's a great place to start because fragmentation really is the root cause behind so many problems. Kind of a necessary evil, but it is a root cause in really creating those different blind spots. When we look at predominantly what we see with our customers as well as other companies that are out there, there's a few similarities between all of them. Number one, of course, being really that in transit uncertainty. Once it leaves my dock or it leaves my supplier's dock, what's going on with my shipment and the manual processes that go into trying to gain information, whether it's calling carriers, whether it's reaching out via email, and kind of crossing your fingers hoping for a response. On the same side, when you look at those specifically first and last mile operations, on the first mile, that could be potentially something you don't control as an organization. That could be your supplier's entire responsibility. How do I get information from my supplier about what's going on with my shipment? And in the last mile, how do I articulate what's going on successfully to my customer to drive that brand recognition and really achieve the value that's there? The last one I want to bring up is the multimodal handover spots that take place. When I have an ocean container and I bring it into the port of Long Beach, is it going to stay in that container and be railed into Chicago? Is it going to be broken up into three separate truckloads? And now I have to figure out where are they, what SKUs are on what shipment, and where is the end location for those shipments. So lots of different areas there.
Yeah, I remember working in ocean, and those were exactly my blind spots that I had as a freight forwarder.
Yep,
Because number one is where's my stuff, right? But once you get into consolidated containers or containers that get de-stuffed at the port and then put into different trucks, you're right. How do I know which PO is where? And if one truck's going to come in tomorrow, how do I know it has the PO that I need for my customer? I mean, there's so many moving
exactly.
parts.
Exactly. And to your last question about, hey, why are these kind of being overlooked? I think it's just kind of the status quo at this point. Companies say, well, I don't control the freight, my supplier does. This is how life has to be. This is just because I'm removed from that part of the transport or it's a blind spot. That's just how things are. And as we'll discuss today, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I mean, and we're talking like I was in imports a very long time ago. We're probably talking 10 to 15 years ago, and that's how I was doing things. So,
Hmm.
that's how I was thinking about things. If we're still doing that today, it's definitely a blind spot, and we need to shine some light on that. So, how can
Absolutely.
organizations then tackle that, right? They're blind spots for a reason. What approach should businesses really be taking when it comes to evaluating their ecosystem to shine that light that I said on those blind spots?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you may think I'll come here and say, you got to point right to visibility. It's visibility right away. But in truth, organizations need to take a more diagnostic approach at the actual problem itself. So when we sit down with companies and we're discussing these blind spots or how to achieve true supply chain transparency or resiliency, the very first step we always take is mapping the journey. Let's take an example SKU within your ecosystem and paint that journey from starting with your supplier all the way to your manufacturing and assembly, maybe here in the Americas, and then the end delivery to a customer. From that journey, that's going to tell us a lot because we're going to be able to ask questions like, where does this data come from today? How accurate is the information you're getting at this section? Who needs this information and when do they need it? How timely? That conversation then spurs the identification of the pain, really diagnosing where is the pain in your supply chain and understanding, do you have lots of customers calling about late deliveries? Do you have line down situations because you're not getting deliveries inbound from your suppliers quick enough? And then the final step is the quantification of the cost. How much are these pain points and problems costing you as an organization? Because from there, then we can start to align the specific technology that's required to that problem. But you're kind of just guessing if you don't identify and quantify the problem first.
Well, and I would imagine when you come to them and say, this is what it's costing you, they're surprised every time.
Absolutely. And that's always a bigger number than they imagine, 100%. Because as we discussed, it's the status quo today, right? It's this
Yeah.
is my day in and day out. And having that conversation around this is the value is really impactful.
Well, and I think another question too is why don't I have the data? Right? There might be a gap in data that they need to be able to achieve
Hmm.
from somebody along the chain, along the supply chain, that they don't actually recognize that they're not getting today, that they need to implement for tomorrow,
100%.
All right. So when those blind spots are uncovered and addressed, what's the impact of that? You just said, right? We just talked about how they're surprised by how much it's costing them. Do you have any examples that you can share of how closing those visibility gaps leads to performance improvement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so at Shippeo, we have what we call our seven value drivers behind real-time visibility, right? There's the operational efficiencies, increasing customer satisfaction, reduction of extra freight costs, and I won't list off all seven here, but there's a lot of value that can be pulled from this. If we look at just that bottom line impact, one of the biggest ones is around operational efficiencies. So having your customer service team or your logistics team who's taking 30 minutes, an hour and a half for each shipment, trying to figure out where is it in the transport process. I've got customers calling me upset saying, hey, I need this SKU, I need this information, and we don't know. We're calling the carrier's not picking up, or there's some other gap there to information, and these resolution times are taking a really long time.
Hmm.
What we can go in and say, hey, What if your customer service team, what if your logistics team had immediate access to information at their fingertips, understanding exactly what's going on with their shipment, or better yet, proactively alerting the external stakeholder as to what's going on? Meaning, anytime customers reaching out, you can now treat that as an escalation. That shouldn't be standard business as usual because you're proactively providing tracking links and other things to them to give them that visibility. When we think about the impact that has for our customers and thinking about one of our CPG customers I was talking with earlier today, they're experiencing things like, hey, before our average resolution time on a customer call was 2.5 hours to get them the final information they needed
Woo.
about critical shipments in their business. But with access to real-time visibility, sometimes it's immediate. So 1 minute, 2 minutes, and they have their answers. And in more complex cases, the ability to root out what the root cause of the problem is can be done within 15 minutes. So you're
Wow.
talking about dramatic changes for companies who are doing that across tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of shipments every year. It's a big difference.
Yeah, and it's gotten better. So if I go
It's
back
gotten
to my
much
days
better.
in ocean, I think, sometimes it was overnight. Maybe it was a couple of days to be able to get an answer. So
Yes.
you're talking, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, but in today's society and
Mhm.
with the expectation that people are getting in their personal lives, it's translating into their professional lives and what they are expecting from their vendors. And so that 1 to 2 minute or that 15 minute is crucial, right? For it to take 3 to 3.5 hours today, it's it's better than it was before, but it's still not
Mhm.
good enough. You need to be able to answer in
Absolutely.
real time because otherwise they're going to go to somebody else.
100%. I mean, it's the classic B2C, hey, the big transformation that took place in that world where the minute I order something, I can see it coming, whether it's a $60 pair of shoes or it's a $200 brand new TV. But in the B2B world, customers are saying, hey, I order hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of goods, and I have no idea what's going on with my shipment. And that's really the gap that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, I had a recent experience as a B2C, which I mean, really at the end of the day, what happens in the B2B world really translates into that consumer
Absolutely.
experience for their customer. And that one example, so I ordered something and then I got a notice that they canceled my order, but there was no explanation. Like there was no explanation, nothing. And then they sent me a empty box with two small samples. It was the weirdest
Oh,
thing. And so I was like, okay, well they canceled my order. I'll just go order from somewhere else. But when I
mhm.
called them, they said they canceled it because they didn't have it in stock. But they didn't tell me that was the reason. And then when I called in, she was like, good news, it's back in stock, but you have to go on the website to reorder it. I'll tell you, I probably won't order that product ever again.
Yeah,
And so it's really because they weren't able to tell me in real time that the product wasn't in stock and therefore it would be a couple of days to be delivered to me.
absolutely.
Like that visibility is crucial to keeping customers. And if we think about it as a freight forwarder, those are the experiences that our customer's customer are going through. That means the difference between a return customer or a not return customer. So just want to point that out because it really is that domino effect, and visibility
Yep.
is going to be that differentiator for you. So, as an industry, we've been talking about visibility for a while. I've been talking about visibility for a while, but I think that at an organizational level, people have often struggled to pin down what it really means to them. So,
Yep.
for your customers, how does that real time visibility impact key business outcomes? Because I think at the end of the day, when we're thinking about visibility, it could mean different things to different people. But if it's tied
Mhm.
to a business outcome, we really get that clarity as to what it means to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. So at the end of the day, it's all tied into what processes you enable it with, right? So if I have a technology stack of ERP system, TMS system that I have users engaging with every single day, is it powering those systems with real-time information around what's going on with shipments? Or is it more so it's standalone visibility? When we talk about key processes that we're influencing and the influence we have on those, I point right to the reduction of the extra freight costs as an excellent example. Coming from the ocean side, you know about D&D, right? The detention and
Mhm.
demurrage costs that
Whew.
large ocean shippers are facing every single day. Sometimes when we're talking with companies that are doing 60, 70, 100,000 boxes annually, it's like this helplessness of like, I don't know where to go. I'm trying to get everything off the port or back to the port as quick as possible, but I don't have the controller. I don't understand what needs to be done and when. So one of the big conversations we have in relation to the ocean side is creating that transparency for D&D and putting the information into the systems that are necessary. So think of visibility as your system of information, really powering your system of orchestration. So my visibility solution is telling me, hey, I've got 7 boxes that are approaching their detention period at the port. I need to go get those picked up. If I'm feeding that information real time into my TMS system, where I'm actually going to go out and tender my load to a carrier, I can then see that information, make a decision, and execute upon it right away. So that's an example of how some companies are leveraging visibility for business outcomes.
Yeah, well, and those can be really expensive oopsies,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. And I mean, with simple transparency, it's a simple thought, but understanding critically at any given moment what's at risk and what's approaching, we're saving companies millions, literally millions
Yeah.
of dollars in just those detention demurrage fees.
Well, yeah, and because if the mistake is done by the freight forwarder, you can't necessarily pass those costs over to the customer, and so that eats into that very small bottom line that freight forwarders have. And we don't want to be doing that.
Absolutely.
We want to be putting money back in their pockets. We do not want to be cutting into their very small bottom lines. All right. So, how can companies then understand what visibility could mean to them, real and like really start to build a business case for the real-time visibility? Like, where do we start? Where's that foundational sort of questions that we want to be asking so that we know
Mhm.
where we want to be around visibility? And then how do we build on that?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, looking at when we talked about mapping out that entire journey, it's having that conversation with the customer on the inbound side. How much time is your team spending communicating with your suppliers about where shipments are? Do you have issues in your production lines being down potentially because you're not bringing in specific goods often enough? And starting to quantify those issues, right? So if I go in and I say, hey, I've had 6 line downs so far this year, and the reason behind those is because the just-in-time deliveries weren't there. I didn't know they were going to be late. I had no idea what was going on. And now I had this issue and line downs. I mean, if we look at automotive as an example, we're again talking about millions and millions of dollars for very, very short windows of line down situations. So it's really about building out that map and then asking the specific questions in those areas. So that was an example on inbound. On the outbound side, it's how many times are your customers calling you? How many, what we would call WISMO, where is my order requests, are you getting from your customers on a daily basis? Answering that question, saying, okay, how long does it take to resolve an issue when you do get a call? And then starting to align the key principles of, hey, how much of a reduction can we make to that?
Yeah. And those are two really great examples. And I appreciate you for sharing that because at the end of the day, when those lines are down, again, it's that domino effect. It's not necessarily what it's costing them for those lines to be down, but who is that affecting afterwards? What does that mean for
Absolutely.
store shelves? What does that mean for idle cars
Hmm.
that are waiting for a part? Sometimes it could be aircraft on ground waiting for a part to come in. Like these are all things that are affecting real world outcomes for real human beings that are going through their day to day and might need critical parts for something,
Yep.
right? And that's where that transparency and visibility is going to come into play and really help us sort of move things forward as an industry, but also as an economy. So, obviously, this is all tied to technology, right? So, when
Yep.
companies are thinking about turning visibility into business value rather than just an investment, what should they be thinking about when it comes to their tech stack? A lot of people are taking a look at their tech stacks right now,
Yeah.
what it's doing for them, how much they have in that tech stack. So, talk to me about this.
That's a great question, and really, the technology is the enabler. We know this very well. It's to enable people to be more effective at achieving the outcomes that they want to achieve. So rather than focusing on, hey, what tech do I specifically need? It's again identification of that specific problem. What problem am I trying to conquer? And then aligning technology to that. In the world of visibility, there's worlds where you have standalone visibility and worlds where you have highly integrated visibility solution. So to give you an example, for visibility standalone, if I'm just a large ocean shipper, and for me, the goal is to provide better transparency for my end customer, maybe I'm in the paper and pulp industry, of where that's all going to go. With Shippeo and with others, I don't need to send them any information. They can get the data directly from the steamship lines themselves. They can populate and provide real-time tracking on all of my bookings and containers in the platform. And I can go in there and start to assess detention and demurrage. I can go in there and I can start to look at in real time what's the delay on my containers without ever having another piece of technology in my tech stack. That being said, there's also what we would call pretty well integrated visibility. So a lot of companies have different TMS or ERP systems, and they want their teams working out of those systems for efficiency purposes. They say, if I try to add another system on top of what my team's working in today, they're just not going to use it, Ross. They say that, hey, great platform, looks really good, super happy with what you're showing. My team's not going to do it, but they're already in 9 different
Wow.
systems today. They're not going to go to a 10th. So for us, it's how can we provide data back into those TMS systems? So
Mm.
is it sharing basic milestone information about what's going on with the shipment plus a tracking link into TMS so the user who's executing in TMS all day can quickly click in, see what's going on with their shipment, and keep on moving forward. Lastly, you have super well integrated, you have actionable visibility. And that's going to be the biggest differentiator and where you notice the biggest change. So if you're associating SKU or PO level information with your shipments, I now have visibility to where any given SKU or any given PO sales order is at any given time. If I'm sharing that information back into, let's say, my ERP or through a middleware into a bunch of different systems, I have an understanding of, okay, I'm in my WMS or inventory management system. And what I can see is because Shippeo is telling me that this PO is going to be late, I'm at risk of a stock out at this specific location. In that same system, I can go book an expedited shipment from a different supplier to make sure I get those goods here on time. And then Shippeo is going to track that expedited shipment for me. So that whole ecosystem comes together across multiple systems. So technology is super important, but it's really around the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve, whether it's just simple track and trace, and there's a bunch of different value there, or is it a well organized and orchestrated system of constant learning and resilience?
Well, and also data sharing as well. So I like what you said, right? You're not just adding to a tech stack, you're actually adding value back into that tech stack. And
Exactly.
so the data is being shared, and you're bringing sort of that another layer of what they might not have currently to give them that granular visibility that they need just to take them even that much further in competitive advantage.
Absolutely. We use the expression, hey, you own the Ferrari. You've got the nice ERP system. You've got the great TMS system. Now you need to put the high octane fuel into it to make it run effectively and to really get all of the value you can out of it.
Amazing. I love that analogy. I love how people take what's happening in technology and supply chain and turn it into a Ferrari. I mean, who doesn't love a Ferrari, right? Is it red? I mean, it's got to be red.
That's right.
So partnership is key to success, but there's so many vendors and technologies out there. It can be really overwhelming for supply chain teams, professionals, leaders. How should businesses approach choosing the right partner, ensuring that that investment is scalable and that the technology will be future proof? Because we're already struggling with trying to simplify towering tech stacks, but we're also trying to make sure that we are partnering with the right people, the right technology, so that we can grow together. And it's really that scalable option for us, and we can trust in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. So when we look at it, it's really about understanding what your existing tech stack looks like. You have a trusted partner, potentially if we're talking ERP, that you've spent millions of dollars on situating perfectly for your team. So it's exactly what they need to be able to do at the end of the day. What our recommendation is talk to those technology providers, or when you're vetting out visibility solutions or new pieces of technology that you want to bring in the fold, bring your different partners together into a room, because eventually there's going to have to be integration that takes place. There's going to have to be data interchange that takes place. It's important to understand and mutually understand, hey, what are your growth plans together? In the visibility marketplace, I don't want to say visibility is supplemental, but you're not doing your actual business. You can do a lot of it, but you're not conducting your actual business like you are within an ERP. So understanding you've got this basis ERP system, you want to provide it with high value information to make decisions. You should be talking to your ERP provider. You should be talking to your TMS provider to help you understand what is the most scalable solution within my ecosystem, because SAP has their, for example, their clean core initiatives where it says, hey, to make sure things are highly scalable and future proof and you're getting the latest innovation, these are the products that we want you to be using, or these are the things that you should have in your core. So looking at that and looking at the rest of the industry, that's the number one way to be foolproof, is to be checking with who you're working with today.
I love that. Collaboration is the future of business. And I've never really heard of bringing all those systems together at the table and sort of
Mhm.
saying, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What does the future look like? How do we grow together? And how do we integrate? I think it's also important to have somebody, I think, on the team or maybe a consultant that knows the different systems and can talk
Yep.
about how they can integrate together. Because sometimes when you get the vendors together, they may or may not, they might say that they can integrate, they might have to work on it. Who knows?
Yep.
But because I think that integration piece is key as well, right? You need to be able to work with different vendors who can integrate together and share that data, but also who's willing to share the data as well.
Yes, 100%. I mean, the share, who's willing to share the information. When we talk about, we started the conversation and blind spots and things like that.
Right.
One of the huge eye-opening pieces to drawing that end-to-end supply chain map is having the discussions around, where can't I get data? There's going to be points where I, as a consultant, will go in and say, hey, you're too far removed from the data, or there's too many obstacles in the way to be able to get accurate and timely information. Unless you change the way your business is working in that area, you're not going to get visibility. And it's the same when we start talking about the technology piece as well. You have to understand, who are the vendors you're working with and how are they getting the data into their system.
Yes, it's so true, so true. Now, we know that a huge part of transformation is change management.
Yeah.
Now, many supply chain professionals have been stuck in firefighting mode because they really haven't had any other option. But I think if they're equipped with the right partner, the right technology, real-time visibility, how can organizations really shift their team's mindset to actually work with these new solutions in a more strategic and proactive way? I say this all the time. You know, digital transformation is 20% technology, 80% people. And so,
Yes.
how do we get everybody to the table and on the same page as to what this is going to do for us?
Yeah, 100%. And the change management piece is the biggest obstacle to achieving those outcomes. The technology works. And now we're at a point where the technology works when put in place. But really getting people to adapt to it and to work with it and to use the information they're being given, that can be the bigger challenge of the two. So first and foremost, it's how can we provide the data in a way that they can consume it easily? That for us is one of the biggest pieces with visibility. And what we discovered is it's the integrations with their existing systems, just like we were talking about before. Can I get this information to the TMS they're already using as part of their standard workday, or the ERP system they're already using? If we can, then it's supplemental to what they're doing. They don't have to do anything different outside their day. Now, there are cases where that's not the move. So there is a separate platform. There is a larger piece of change that has to take place. In those cases, it's really the standard, celebrate the small wins, start showing them, hey, this is how the new solution works. This is how it makes your life easier, really breaking it down for them on with these two additional steps, you're saving yourself 20, 30, 45 minutes of your day on specific parts here. There's also the redefinition of some of those roles and responsibilities. Somebody who was solely responsible for tackling inbound phone calls from their customer, all of a sudden there's an 80% decrease in those inbound calls because you implemented real-time visibility. Well, you need to restructure that role. Maybe it's into a high profile, hey, I'm dealing with now the top 2% of my customers where I am doing proactive outreach to
Hmm.
see, hey, are you achieving the value? Are the links that are being sent, do you feel the data is accurate? Is there anything else we can do? Going away from that firefighting, yes, customer A, I can solve that problem. Yes, customer B, to customer A, is there anything else that I can provide you to make your experience with my company more seamless?
Customer
So
experience. I love that.
it's everything, and customer and excuse me, companies are really starting to hang their hat on that customer experience.
Yeah.
Finally, there's the training and the empowerment of the users. It shouldn't be up to your organization, the buyer of the technology, to solely train everybody within the company on how to get the value out of it. When you're dealing with a technology provider, ideally they've got hundreds of customers who they've gone through this same process with and have achieved very similar outcomes to what you're hoping to achieve.
Hmm.
So it should be mutually you and the technology provider working with your customers and your users to understand the value that can be achieved and get them trained up on it. And then having a feedback loop to fill that back in. But
I
go
love
ahead.
that. No, I just want to talk about training too, right? I think it's not necessarily, it is the technology provider that has to provide the training. But I think it's also up to the leadership in the organization to let the technology partner know how the teams learn the best.
Yes.
What does that look like? How can we make this easier for everybody? And the more information I think you can get as a technology provider providing that training, the better it's going to be for everybody. Sometimes we just sort of sit back and we're like, okay, technology provider, take it away. But at the end of the day, if you don't know the team that well, how are you
Mhm.
supposed to organize that training to make sure that they're going to learn it at the pace and how they want to be learning it as well?
That's a really key point to notice, it was a great segue into my last point of you need to have an internal champion at the organization to help pinpoint and point you in the right direction and guide you as the technology provider. So
Mhm.
nominating somebody that says, hey, you're accountable for visibility within our organization now. You need to help the provider and point them in the right direction of this user group needs this information. This is what they want to achieve. This business unit is focused on these things, we're going to have to go about it doing this way. You have all the tribal knowledge of how the inner workings of your organization work. And we're just there as experts of the solution and helping to ensure that the value is achievable.
Yeah, and we've talked about this earlier on, collaboration being the future of business, collaboration amongst vendors. But I think this
Mhm.
is really where collaboration comes in internally, right? I think to make this happen, we need to break down those silos. We need to get buy-in across different stakeholders because you're saying, right, you need that internal champion, and this is going to affect many people throughout the organization. Can you talk to
Absolutely.
us about what that cross-functional alignment needs to look like and the risks if that change management piece isn't securely in place?
Yeah, 100%. So from a cross-functional alignment standpoint, it's really having consistent meetings with your champion and the technology provider. So sitting down on a weekly basis is usually the cadence we start at to understand, okay, what is the goal outcome of this week that we want to achieve? What is the one thing that's on your list of what needs to happen here for this to be achievable? By breaking it into those bite-sized bits, you're slowly chipping away at the larger project as a whole. The second piece there is when we're talking about the alignment internally, it's them making the introductions to the different stakeholders. It's not setting up a meeting, you join, and then somebody who doesn't know you joins, and you're trying to train them up, get them used to the value and things. It's mutually investing time in with those different user groups to make sure that they understand exactly, hey, this is what a day in the life of your new life and your new redefined role can look like with visibility. It's going to save you X amount of hours so you can finally focus on what you want to do. And having your champion chirp in and say, yeah, do you know how you're always talking to me about you do XYZ and then you're working till 8
Yes.
p.m. trying to do, ABC.
Hmm.
That's gone now. You can really focus your efforts in the most valuable spot possible because they really need to be championing the actual value that this creates for that specific user as well. It's not about just organizational ones and zeros of bottom line numbers. It's also about the value that that creates for the actual user that's doing it.
And they're not working till 8 p.m. at night
They're
anymore.
not working till 8 p.m. Exactly. What a win.
I love that. So I can't believe we're at the last question, but I want to ask you one more question because I think it's really important that we end this on a note where people can take action. So what do
Mhm.
you think our listeners should really take away from the conversation today? Do you have any final advice or maybe one thing that people should be taking action on based on the conversation today?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the number one piece of advice I give is stop thinking about real-time visibility as a nice to have. These blind spots and these gaps are very real. Your teams are feeling pain, your customers feel pain in those gaps, and even your suppliers feel pain in those
And your
gaps. So
consumers, your customer's customer are feeling all the
your
pain.
customer everybody's feeling pain, and visibility is really an excellent path to conquering a lot of that pain. That being said, I wouldn't start with the hey, this is the solution. It all needs to start with the why, as we talked about, the mapping out, the looking at your supply chain holistically, identifying the pain points, quantifying those pains, and understanding why you want visibility or why you need any piece of technology in that manner. Second, and we were just talking about it, it's the true partnership. Work with somebody who you can truly collaborate with, who you have faith that has experience in doing projects like yours and has a clear path towards a successful deployment. Because as we were talking about, if it's not successful, you just have another piece of technology on the shelf that nobody's using.
Mhm.
And finally, invest in your people. People are really 80% of the equation, as you said, and that couldn't be more true. Technology only works if people leverage it. And so investing in your people is the best bet you can make. So by taking these steps, you can move away from being that reactive supply chain to really a proactive, data-driven one that delivers real and measurable value.
And who doesn't want that? I mean, we often talk
Exactly.
about visibility as a must have, but it's crucial to really understand the why, like Ross said. So, to dive into the ROI of real time, the impact of closing visibility gaps, and the results you can achieve when you holistically pull technology and change management into these discussions is truly inspiring. So, did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you what percentage of supply chain organizations increased their IT spending in 2025? Drum roll, please. Well, it's a huge 82%. Businesses might be struggling with budgets, but it's clear the future proof technology is still a strategic imperative for most. So, if you're looking for a partner to give you instant access to real time tracking so you can streamline transportation processes, optimize logistics costs, and enhance customer experience, head over to shippeo.com to learn more. And remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show and check out more content from the best and brightest over on letstalksupplychain.com. Ross, this has been such a pleasure. I want to say thank you to the team at Shippeo for making this episode happen, but a massive thanks to you for joining me today and helping us understand the why behind visibility.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much, Sarah.